Hello and welcome back. I hope you're enjoying this course so far. I recently had a very nice discussion with a student about how I'm formatting my strings in this course, and he brought up some excellent points that I wanted to share with you all. First, there are many different ways that we can format our strings and output text in Python. They all have their strengths and their drawbacks. For our course, I chose to use string concatenation and explicitly convert all variables. This means that if I try to print a string with a float or maybe a list or integer, I'm going to get an error and I have to take precautions such that those errors won't occur. Good news, there are easier ways to do this in Python, and I'm going to introduce a few of them to you now. Bad news, I still chose to do the rest of this course with the more maybe difficult string concatenation and explicit conversions. So sorry on that regards, but I will justify my reasonings later on in this video. So after I show you some of these different ways to format strings, I'll give you my rationale for my choice, and I'll let you be the judge. And I urge you to use whatever you feel is the best for you and will help you most in your learning. So first, let's define some variables of different data types. So I'll say name equals, I'll put a string here, Mike. I'll say age, I'll make it an integer, 33, and I'll say money, and I'll make it a float. So I'll do 9.75. So three different types of data types. So first, I'll put a comment here, and I'll say print using string concatenation. All right, and so this is just like we've normally been doing. So I'll print name plus is plus, I'll call the string function, and I'll convert the integer to a string, because I know I can't combine strings and integers. And then I'll say and has $sign plus, let's convert the float to a string, so string money, and we'll say dollars, period. All right, so if I run this, hopefully we don't get an error. And it says Mike is 33 and has $9.75. Perfect. That looks wonderful. And so you can see here, right, we had to concatenate our different string messages and then explicitly convert the integer and the float to strings. There is another way that we can do this. Another way that we can format strings is to use the .format method. So I'll say print using the .format method. And so I'm going to show you that right now. The .format, and maybe I'll say the .format method for strings. Okay, so this is a string method for strings. So I'll say print, and then I'm going to put quotes for my string, and I'm going to put curly brackets, and inside of the curly brackets I'm going to put 0 is another set of curly brackets, and I'll put a 1, and has, and I'll put another set of curly brackets, and I'll put a $2, period, and I'll close the string. But I'm not going to close the print statement yet. On this string right here that we have, which maybe looks a little confusing. Now you're probably saying, what are these curly brackets, 0, 1, and 2? I'm going to put .format, so I'm going to call the format method, and I'll close my print statement. Now inside of the format method, I have to pass a couple of arguments, namely the respective variables that represent 0, 1, and 2. And I have to pass them in that order. So I'll say name, age, and money, just like that. So if I run this now, we should get the exact same result. And we do, right? Mike is 33 and has $9.75. Perfect. Note here that if I put these in the different order, age, name, money, then we're going to get some funky output. See, 33 is Mike. Well, that's a nice way of talking, I suppose. So let's change that back. So we'll say name, comma, age, comma, money. So there's a good example of how we can format our strings using the .format method. Another option. Another way that we can format strings is to use f-strings. Now, f-strings were introduced in Python 3.6. They're going to take care of our conversions just like the .format method, so we don't have to think or worry about maybe the data type we're using. So let me show you the syntax for this now. So we'll say print using f-strings. So here I'm going to call the print function, and the first thing I'm going to do is type the letter F, not inside quotes, so just the literal letter F, and now I'll put quotes, and I'm going to put curly brackets, and inside I'll put the name of my variable. Name is curly brackets, and inside here I'll put the name of my next variable, age, and has $, and I'll put curly brackets and the name of my variable, money, dollars, and I'll close it. And that's it. That's all I have to do for these F strings right here. It's going to take care of all of the conversions for me. So if we run this now, look at that. It does work. So 3 different ways of doing the same thing. Each, I would say, each with their own strengths and their own weaknesses. Clearly, using F strings is the easiest, probably syntax-wise. And in fact, if I were maybe doing like an intermediate course, I would most certainly probably print using either F strings or the .format method. So let me justify my choice, although I admit maybe it is a bad one for why I chose to use string concatenation. First, I'm a self-taught programmer. I admit it, right? And this is the way I did it when I began learning. And you know what they say, right? Old habits, I guess, die hard. But it worked for me. It helped me get a good understanding of the relationship between different data types and how different data types interact. Second, F strings, this idea here down here, F strings were only introduced in Python 3.6, which I think came out in 2017. So any version of Python running prior to that wouldn't be able to run them or use them. I admit this might be a bad excuse because it's 2020, but there are still a lot of programs that were written using maybe Python 3.5 or something that came before it that won't have the ability to use F strings. And third, and in my opinion, maybe the most important, as an educator, I wanted to put an emphasis on the understanding of the data types that you're working with. When we let Python deal with the typecasting for us, it sort of puts that understanding in the background. As a beginner course on computer science, I really wanted to make sure that my students were gaining that understanding. If you transfer to another programming language, you might see that you have to define variables and you have to declare the data type of the variable to begin working with them. So being aware of how you're working with data types and how they interact is important in some regards. So that's really why I went with my choice to use string concatenation in this course. I'm open to admit that it may not be the correct choice, so I urge you to use the tools at your disposal that you feel will best propel your learning and understanding of this topic. Besides, the goal of this course, they are best accomplished when you are the one writing your own solutions to these 40 challenge problems that I'm going to present you with. The beautiful thing is that you can have ownership of your programs and write them the way that you want to write them. So I wish you good luck, and I'll see you in the next video.